And to kick things off, we are going to hear from Leslie Bocskor on the State of the Industry Address. There you are. Hi, my friend. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It is a spectacular day here in Las Vegas. The sun is shining. The skies are blue. The people are starting to get out and do business and interact a little bit more. The Las Vegas Strip is looking like it may be starting to come back at least a little bit. And so this is spring. And whereas we sort of hit a pause button on the world last year in the beginning of spring, now we're getting to sort of get back to things. You know, it's interesting as I reflect back on the last year. I look at one of the major points that really came out of it, and that is so obvious and so difficult and so incredible all at the same time, and that is change. Now, it's become trite how much people talk about change, embracing change, look for change, etc. And yet, when you look at people and humanity in general, change is something that people are often terrified of. They resist, and even while they talk about the importance of it and wanting to be involved in it, it's extremely selective in terms of the change that they're interested in pursuing. We have not had this option given to us. Change is happening now in a way that is just massive. And I know, at least for me, it has been overwhelming at times, the amount of change going on in the world. And I don't know if it's been for any of you. Has the change felt like it has been at such a rapid pace that sometimes it's hard to keep up? Yeah, nod your head if that's the case. I know some of you are nodding your heads yes. Well, let's look at a couple of things over the last year, and this is all going to sort of set the context for what I'm going to be talking about to get this off and running, and to sort of set the stage for where we are now, where this event is, and where the industries that this event talks about are, and what our roles and opportunities are within it. So the pandemic, obviously, that's the one that's on at the front of everybody's consciousness. The first thing I'm going to say is I don't believe that this is a black swan event. This was not a 100-year flood. This is an indicator of what's coming in the future. As the world becomes more connected, as people who are in the middle of the Congo can find themselves in the middle of Manhattan within 24 hours shaking hands, people who are in the middle of the jungles of the Amazon can be in Paris later that day, can be in Beijing later the same day or a day later. And what that means for the transmission of disease and virus is enormous. And this was a warning shot across our bow of what the future can be like if we're not careful. And so the change that's happening is upon us. Now, I remember a time before the AIDS epidemic. And before the AIDS epidemic, the words safe sex were not common in terms of their usage. And yet, after the AIDS epidemic established itself globally, safe sex became the standard. People would not engage with each other often without saying, "Hey, let's go get our tests together. Let me, we'll get our tests and show that we're both clean." Because sex went from being something that was just casual to being something that could kill you and could be devastating to your life. That is the change that happened, and it happened, and now it's upon us with social interaction, with business, and more. If we fight it, if we avoid it, it's painful. If we embrace it and look for the opportunities that it gives us, it's incredible. Trade is changing constantly now. Asia is on the rise. The Americas are changing. The global trade balance is in constant flux. Cryptocurrencies are disrupting the global monetary system potentially. They're representing change on a scale we have not seen before to that specific area. The technology change, biohacking. I'm sure you've all seen the news that has come out recently about the monkey that was controlling a video game with its mind without any controller, just through thought. Now, that would be magic 100 years ago, and yet that's the reality of where we are today. And that's the reality of where we are going as humanity. Drones, what drones represent. There was a case where drones were seen in front of a US warship. Nobody knows where they came from, hundreds of them. Thousands of drones in the sky as art. They represent a dramatic shift and technological change. Robotics. There was a story that came out of China about robotics. Huge change, like Boston Dynamics, a fleet of 100 robotic dogs all working together in exact unison. Now, this could look apocalyptic, or it could look like an opportunity, and it depends upon how you approach it. We need to be careful about all of these things, and yet we need to understand this change is upon us, and it is creating opportunity. Now, what does that have to do with cannabis and hemp? Well, cannabis and hemp, this is something unlike anything in history I've been able to find has ever happened before. And I'm a little bit of a student of history. And what I mean is the simultaneous growth of the plastics, paper, and textile industry globally into multiple trillions of dollars in revenue a year between all of them, the simultaneous prohibition of hemp, which is potentially one of the greatest contributors to all three of those industries for decades, while those industries advanced, created this bottled change that is upon us now. And what it represents is enormous. The prohibition of cannabis for medicinal use, for adult use, for decades, creating this enormous demand without a market for it that's now being opened up domestically and globally, represents enormous change, unlike anything I've been able to see in history ever before. This represents an economic opportunity unlike any other that any of us or our ancestors have ever lived through. And I think our opportunity to participate in it has to do with how we embrace it, how we look for the opportunities and change that's upon us, and how we anticipate how things will be different moving forward. And we try to work towards participating in that because it's changing so rapidly. We should remember as he's known, the great Wayne Gretzky's quote: "You play to where the puck is going, not where it is or where it's been." And that's what we need to do from a business and personal perspective right now as it regards these industries and the world at large. I'm going to recap some of the things that I talked about in my last presentation earlier this year. The history of where we are, as I just covered, is enormous, and it's made an impact that is unequaled as we look back at the financial markets and the economics of business going back since the birth of the global markets, which is really recent history. I mean, we've only had publicly traded markets since the birth of them, with the Dutch East India Trade Company creating the first public company, so to speak, trading of shares. We have seen the birth of a global economy just in the last few hundred years. And the last 70, 80 years, a huge portion of that, cannabis and hemp were made illegal. Now, normally people would say, well, it's just one plant. How much effect did that have? Well, we all know how much effect that can have. The single convention on narcotic drugs and what it did in terms of making hemp and cannabis illegal globally so that no nation could participate in those markets without violating a UN treaty, that has enormous impact once again. And what it's done is it's created this environment unlike anything that history has presented before, where we have had this change going on in the industries that I mentioned. Alcohol was created as a global industry just in the last 100 years. And now just in the US, I think, what are we looking at? Something like 250 billion in sales just in 2020, 255 billion in sales in alcohol in just in the United States. You're talking about $1 trillion global industry nearly. And that's all been birthed while cannabis was made illegal. Well, the single biggest replacement for alcohol in the United States during the pandemic over the last year has been cannabis. Cannabis is non-toxic. Alcohol is called an intoxicant, which cannabis is not, because it's toxic. It is a poison, where cannabis is not. It produces a similar euphoria, better, some would say. It doesn't create as much impairment, which is obvious, and it is easier to produce in many regards than alcohol is. And so, over the coming time, that $1 trillion global market for all alcohol products, the $250 billion domestic market, you can be certain that that will be disrupted by the cannabis industry, unlike anything that has ever existed for that industry before. And once again, the opportunity it presents, the change it represents is enormous. Medicine. We're now seeing news out of Israel, I believe, that cannabis, a combination of terpenes and cannabinoids, a company called EYBNA, EYBNA, out of Israel, is making strides in understanding how that combination they've developed is preventative to COVID-19 and many other conditions and diseases. This is just the beginning. Cannabis as a whole plant and partial plant therapeutic, the entourage effect that exists for it, etc., is changing the entire narrative around drug development, drug delivery, and the way we approach wellness. Pardon me. The fact that we're going to be seeing the global nutraceutical and supplement market, which is nearly $350 billion a year, upended by the cannabis plant, the hemp plant, is, again, beyond anything anyone could have anticipated. And unlike so many other supplements, where we take them, and I know that this is a common experience, you take the supplements, you believe they're having an effect, but you really don't know. You don't notice an effect. When people use CBD and other cannabinoid and terpene-based combination therapies, yeah, that's right, they experience a noticeable immediate effect. When they use it on their pets, they see an immediate effect. Now, you give your pet glucosamine and chondroitin, and you hope it helps their joints, and maybe it doesn't, maybe you see a difference, maybe you don't. But an animal that was unable to walk, that starts taking CBD, all of a sudden is up and around and looks like it's years younger. This is true for us as well. And this is changing the narrative around nutraceuticals and supplements in an enormous way. And this is just the beginning. The change is upon us. It's happening. Look at it. Try to anticipate it. Understand what it means. And then look for your place within it. Hemp. I can't speak about what this represents enough. The global plastics industry, as I've said over and over again, it is a blight on the earth. The garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean, a gyre spinning around miles in size with plastic there. Does a day go by that we don't hear somewhere in the background a story about microplastics in oysters, microplastics in our food, plastic in the environment, everywhere? It's everywhere. Look around you right now. Look at your desk. Look at your world. Where is there plastic around you? The computer you're watching this through, the phone you're watching this through, is made largely out of plastic. The mouse that my hand is resting on right now is made out of plastic. The water bottle on my desk is made out of plastic. Our automobiles are made out of plastics. The food we eat, all of it, packaged in plastics. It's everywhere. And hemp as a feedstock for bioplastic is unlike anything else that we have ever seen. We've even seen, as you've heard before, Henry Ford saying that bioplastics made partially with hemp are an obvious replacement for so many of the materials in automobiles and are superior to steel in many instances to use them. Fibers, paper, wood pulp paper mills are a blight on the environment wherever they exist. And if we can create hemp pulp, and we will and are creating hemp pulp paper mills, it will be a game changer. The hemp plant is unbelievably useful. The fibers in it, changing the global textile industry. Less water than cotton by a significant amount is needed to produce hemp by the acre. The fiber is sturdier than cotton fiber, more adaptable than cotton fiber. And we're currently studying, is hemp fiber in fact antibacterial and antiviral, antifungal? Does it have components that actually can be used in, again, making face masks to deal with issues like what we're dealing with that are better than using cotton or other fibers? Plastics? Obviously it is. And then I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who is part of one of the largest construction companies in the United States, infrastructure companies, oil and gas. And his family business is the largest maker of roads in one of the biggest states in the country. And he said they've discovered that using the hemp plant in the material for the roads makes it last longer and lowers the cost. And we're going to now start seeing hemp used in construction. Now, we've all heard about hempcrete, and if you haven't, look at it, it's fascinating. And the big issue with hempcrete has been that, unlike concrete, we have not developed all of the ancillary products necessary to use it. Specifically, concrete has solvents that have been made to be able to remove the flash, excess, the mistakes without having to chip it off with a chisel. There are ways to get the excess concrete with solvents that have been developed specifically for that for years now. That's why concrete has become such a massive industry, because we can utilize it effectively without having it to be difficult to work with. Well, those tools, those ancillary products don't exist for hempcrete. The hemp fiber creates a problem when you're trying to dispose of excess hempcrete as it hardens around the mixing machine, as it hardens around where it's being utilized. There was no way to easily remove it. Well, now that there are construction companies that are getting grants from their states and the federal government to begin using hemp and explore using hemp in construction, we will see those ancillary products developed. This became obvious to my team when we visited the construction and concrete convention, cement convention in Las Vegas. I know there's a convention for everything in Vegas, and there was a cement convention and construction convention. And my team went there and they said, what do you know about hempcrete? And sure enough, they found out that the major issue with hempcrete being deployed was the lack of this solvent. Well, now it's being developed, and once it's developed, we're going to start seeing hempcrete as an alternative to standard cement and concrete immediately, which means hundreds of thousands, millions of acres are going to be growing hemp for so many different uses. They're going to be growing hemp for paper, for plastics, for fiber, for construction. This is a change unlike anything we have ever seen, and the timing could not be better. Whether or not you believe in anthropogenic global warming, the burning of fossil fuels and releasing of all of the carbon dioxide from the burning of them, it would be good to balance it with turning that carbon dioxide into oxygen. Well, what will millions and millions of acres of hemp do? They will pull the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, pull that carbon into the hemp plant, which will then get used to make plastics, paper, fibers, construction materials, and then end up being essentially sequestered back in the earth through landfill and through the use of making roads and other things like that, effectively creating the largest carbon negative industry on Earth, producing more oxygen for our atmosphere, removing more carbon dioxide than any other single crop. That is where we are headed. The change is enormous, and it's coming. The employment this represents, enormous. The changes in the United States, I'm sure we're all paying attention to it. New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Texas, looking at change as it regards medical marijuana. This is coming. We had hoped the Biden administration would, in its first 100 days, look towards major reform and descheduling of cannabis. I believe that is now off the table. At the same time, the majority leader, Schumer, has said they are moving forward with national federal change on cannabis and the scheduling of it and how it's handled on a national and federal basis. That change is coming. It may take a little longer than we expected now. We were hopeful it would be in the first half of this year. Maybe it's the second half of this year, beginning of next year. But once again, the time has come. As one of my dear friends who has been a mentor of mine as it regards politics and strategy has always said, you can always count on a politician to do the right thing once you've removed every other choice. And what we have been doing by getting cannabis legal in state after state after state is we are removing the choice to allow it to remain federally illegal. Little by little, we're chipping away at that, and that change is upon us. The opportunities it once again represents beyond anything we have ever lived through, economically and more. Now, as we look at what this means on a domestic basis, what are the opportunities that it's creating? What is it? How will this change my life? We all wonder. Well, these are your choices. Mm-hmm. Are you just going to enjoy the change because now you can use cannabis legally in New York City and go to Central Park and smoke a joint while you play Frisbee, which I don't know that that's necessarily legal, but that's the type of change we're looking at. Or are you going to be involved in the industry? Are you going to start a business? Are you going to invest in a business? Well, these are choices we all need to make, and we need to follow where our passions are. One of the single biggest mistakes I see many entrepreneurs and investors do as they look at this industry is they look at this as an opportunity to get out of the sandbox they've played in for so many years. If you're a dentist and you have been working as a dentist for decades, and all of a sudden you say, I'd like to get into the cannabis industry and I want to now learn how to grow cannabis, not necessarily a great choice. A great choice might be, if you're a dentist, to start looking at how it will affect your industry and look for opportunities that speak to your experience and take your experience and translate it into something that can really contribute to the world through bringing it into this industry. The opportunities are endless and they're enormous. The rewards for all of them are here and they are happening now. What we need to be focused on now, more than any other industry that we have ever seen, is this is a time when we can make a difference, unlike any that any of us have ever been able to do before. I mean, not to say that we haven't had an opportunity to make a difference before. Some of you are activists and have made huge differences in what you've done. Well, now you have this enormous amount of inertia behind you. You have this huge wave of change that's taking place. And if you just harness a little bit of that energy and figure out how you can participate into it, add to it and make a small difference, change how business is done, add ethics to the way business is done, look at and making changes that make the world a better place on a consistent basis. These are changes that we can now embrace and be part of and help to some small extent make the world a better place while we are participating in economic opportunity unlike anything we have ever seen before. Wellness, medicine, health, lifestyle, plastics, textile, paper, construction. It seems like a miracle, and it is. And it's the miracle that we see around us all the time. It seems too good to be true. It's not too good to be true. It is just this opportunity that exists unlike anything we've ever seen before. Look for the change, look for your part in it, participate in it, help make it happen in the way that fits with your passion, your goals. This is an opportunity unlike anything we've ever seen before. Enjoy these moments. There are many who have come before us who've worked incredibly hard and sacrificed enormously, who've spent time in jail, who've lost their lives, who've lost their livelihoods. We're standing on their shoulders, and without the work of those before us, we would not have these opportunities. Honor that in what you do, and as you enjoy the benefits from this, honor it by giving back, by being part of a positive change in the world around you, and by just enjoying what you have in front of you, because this is a moment unlike anything we've seen before and will ever see again. I am honored to be a part of it. I'm honored to be here with everybody from the conference and to be asked to have a moment to make these comments. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Leslie, your talk, as always, is fantastic and motivating. I have a couple of questions for you, and I'm also looking for questions from the audience. But you talked about all of the different ways that hemp can be productive in our society, and I hadn't heard construction before outside of hempcrete. That's really exciting. What particular area do you see coming to the mainstream the fastest and first?
Fastest is the real. That's a very good question, and it is one I don't get often. And what's coming first? Well, I'd say that what is coming first is probably something I hadn't anticipated, and it is construction. Why? Because the economics are there. States are now beginning to look at incentives to use hemp in construction and in hempcrete, or an analog of hempcrete. It may not be hempcrete exactly. It may be used in macadam of roads or something like that. And so as we're looking at this enormous infrastructure spend that will likely happen in some form, changing the roads and highways of the United States, unlike anything we've seen before, we will see economic incentives to begin using hemp in it. I never anticipated that. I thought it would happen this fast, but it is happening now. And even before we're seeing hemp in plastic, even before we're seeing hemp replace pulp paper, we're seeing hemp being contemplated for construction.
Thank you. A question from the audience. Actually, 3 or 4 people have asked the same question now. In what it says, what is the update on INQD?
I would love to be able to give an update on it right now. I can say this. My team has been working nonstop. We have been spending our time very diligently focused, and we are going to release information when it is being done correctly and when we are in line with all compliance as regards public companies. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and I appreciate everybody's support, and I am looking forward to some updates soon.
I'll ask one more question while some of the audience may jump in and ask some. But you talked. One thing I really liked you talking about is if you're a dentist, find out how you can utilize the hemp within your industry. I see so many people jumping into the industry and they haven't a clue what they're doing. Could you give us one more example of an industry that you think really should jump in and participate in hemp or marijuana?
Sure. I think that the cosmetics and self-care industry is starting to do it, and we have only seen the beginning of that. As we look at everything from body care through washes, through everything that has to do with cosmetics and self-care, as an aspect of the nutraceutical and supplement industry, that is enormous. This is on my mind only because I have a friend that owns a chain of salons, and they've now started to look at how hemp-based products and CBD and other cannabis-based products can make a difference, the antiviral, antibacterial qualities, etc., in improving the hygiene of their business while providing anti-inflammatory products to their customers has been an enormous opportunity for them. And they're finding it's creating more revenue for their business than they had before, because the customers come in and start buying these CBD hemp-based products, CBN, CBG, and other hemp-based wellness products that they were not buying from them before. So it has added to their bottom line to include it. So the wellness and cosmetics industry is one that I'm seeing begin to really establish itself in this industry.
Well, Leslie, thank you. I always enjoy your energy and your intelligence on the subject matter.
It's such a pleasure to be here. I think you guys have put together an incredible lineup. A shout out to Todd Denkin, who I believe is going to be a part of the conference. Nathaniel Gurian of FinCan, one of the brightest people in the industry, providing some real help. A shout out to everybody at the conference and the work they're doing. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out to me personally. I'm happy to engage.
You did amazing, Leslie.
You can reach out to Leslie through info@cannaworldexpo.com or just go to cannaworldexpo.com, hit our contact page, say you need to reach out to Leslie, and we'll make that happen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.